Hello everybody, and I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful day. So in today's video, we're going over metabolism and nutrition. This only, generally speaking, when we meet face to face, this content only is about 1 day worth of class. You already have one other video explaining metabolism and your actual cellular respiration cycle in what I think is far less frightening in chemistry-y terms for you. So today we're just going to be talking about nutrition and how this kind of thing affects your body. So we're going to be skipping a lot of this. We're going to be skipping a lot of what's in this PowerPoint that you can see on the screen right now. And we're just basically going to be getting to the meat and bones of what you need to know about nutrition and some other things about health in general. Right? So we have metabolism and nutrition. And we are going to be focusing on the nutrition mostly. But we know that metabolism is the sum of all chemical reactions in your body, right? Catabolic reactions are going to be breaking food down so you can obtain energy. Anabolic reactions are also called biosynthesis, are using energy to build other larger molecules that you may need. So we do various things with our various nutrients. We break things down to get energy, or we build things back up, right? So we need to talk about our nutrients first, right? These are your nutrients, right? You guys have all seen a food pyramid. You know that stuff is on the food pyramid that you need to eat. You know what those things are. We can equate all of this stuff to food today. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be talking to you about food and the food that we eat, right? So a nutrient is any substance in a food that promotes normal growth, maintenance, and repair in our bodies. That's what a nutrient is. Major nutrients that we need are carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. Carbohydrates is the all-encompassing term for a group of chemicals that we tend to call sugars. This is glucose and other sugars like fructose and starches and that kind of thing. That's what a carb is, right? Lipids are fats. This is glycerol and fatty acid chains that make up fats, right? And then proteins. You guys know what proteins are? Proteins help you build your muscles big and strong because that's what your muscles are made out of. So we have protein that we need to eat, right? Other nutrients that we may not also get enough of and that kind of good stuff would be things like vitamins and minerals, right? And technically speaking, water is also in here as well, right? So now we need to talk about what each of these actually do for your body, other than talking about these kind of things, right? And there were a lot of metabolic diseases that we mentioned in previous units, right? Cushing's syndrome or Addison's disease is basically too much or too little cortisol in your system. We talked about those from your endocrine system, right? We need to know that catabolic hormones or catabolic things break stuff down for energy. So when we start talking about gluconeogenesis, you need cortisol for that. It's catabolic. Glucagon, that was a hormone that your pancreas released, right? That's glyconeogenesis, or making fats. Epinephrine also breaks things down, right? So that's catabolic. Anabolic things are stimulate building up things to use as energy. So growth hormone, insulin, and testosterone are all going to be anabolic things, right? Right, we're not going to talk about your Krebs cycle in this video, so we're going to move on past these scary images and chemical formulas, right? Right, so carbs. We need to talk about carbs first, right? You need carbs to live. Carbs are sugars. I know that right now a lot of fad diets don't want you to eat carbs, but you need some amount of carbs. Remember from our previous units, your red blood cells don't have the ability to make their own energy. If they need energy inside them, it has to be from blood sugar. If you remember from ANP1, your nerves are the same. Your nerves do not have mitochondria in them, or very many, if any. So your actual neurons in your brain need you to deliver carbohydrate sugar to them so they can function. They cannot make their own ATP. They can't make their own energy. So you have to have some amount of simple carbs and sugars in your diet. Maybe a little bit, but you have to have some to keep things functioning. So dietary sources of sugars in your body, right, would be things like starches. Those are called complex carbohydrates, and you can normally find those in grains and vegetables. So whole grain wheat, whole grain bread, vegetables like potatoes have a lot of starches in them as well as vitamins, right? More simplistic carbs can be the sugars in fruit. Sugarcane, which is what gives you sugar on the table, right? Other sweet things like sugar beets. Milk has a lot of sugar in it, as well as honey. So honey is a produced thing that will make sugar or sweetness, right? Fiber, insoluble fiber, like cellulose, is also technically also a carbohydrate, but it's not soluble and our bodies cannot break it down. So the roughage that you eat in vegetables are also made out of carbs. We just can't break down those carbs. And you also have soluble fiber, like pectin, which is used to make jam and jellies. It's also found naturally in fruits like apples and blueberries and that kind of thing. Soluble fiber can also reduce your blood cholesterol levels. So we like having those kind of good soluble fibers in our system. Carbs can be used for a couple of things. Carbs break down into glucose at their most basic level. And glucose is the fuel used by cells to make ATP. Your neurons and red blood cells, as mentioned, are almost entirely run by glucose in your blood. And then excess glucose is converted into glycogen for fat storage. Right? Dietary requirements that you guys may need to know if you don't have your food pyramid in front of you. Right? The maximum amount of sugar you should be eating today, or like a day, is about 100 grams a day to maintain adequate blood sugar levels. Right? Your recommended minimum, the recommended minimum could be as high as 130 grams a day, depending upon your body type and how large you are. The recommended intake is 45 to 65% of your total calorie intake. And you should be aiming mostly for those complex carbohydrates because they will help you the most. Right? When your body has low blood sugar, it will trigger something called gluconeogenesis, which is creating new sugars for your bloodstream and your body. So this is the chemical process of converting glycerol, pyruvate, and a bunch of other things into glucose. This is breaking down fat to turn into glucose. Right? So this occurs in the liver, and it's going to protect your body from hypoglycemia. So if your chemo indicators say, hey, we don't have enough blood sugar, like we don't have enough sugar to run things, your body will start gluconeogenesis to create more sugar in your bloodstream. Right? Right? When you have too much sugar in your body or in your bloodstream, though, that starts something called glycogenesis, which is then going to start combining glucose molecules again to form something called glycogen. Your liver and skeletal muscle fibers are going to synthesize and store the most glycogen, right? Glycogen was a backbone of fatty acid chains, because fatty acid chains, you can have up to 3 of them attached to each glycogen, right? Glycogenolysis, is triggered by low blood glucose levels, and then glycogen is then split back into glucose, right? This can only be done in the liver, kidneys, and intestinal cells, right? So this is how your body is going to flip back and forth between sugars and fats. Fats are the next one of your happy little macromolecules that we're going to discuss, right? So lipids or fats, right? Your dietary sources of fats that you're going to eat, right? Triglycerides are part of this, right? Triglycerides can be found in saturated fats in meat, dairy, and tropical oils, right? So saturated fats are the ones that are found in meat and dairy. Unsaturated fats are normally found in seeds, nuts, olive oil, and vegetable oils. This is why they want you to use, this is why if you are trying to cook and eat healthily, the healthy oils that they are advertising for you to eat are things like sunflower seed oil, vegetable oil, sesame oil, things that come from seeds and nuts. Olive oil is particularly healthy and good for you. And they want you to also use stuff from vegetables instead of using the heavier fats that you can use, like butter or butter or lard and that kind of thing, because butter and lard are saturated fats, whereas vegetable oils are not. Right? You can also find some lipids in cholesterol that's found in egg yolk. That's the yellow part of an egg. There's also going to be cholesterol in meat, organ meats, shellfish, and milk products, because milk is very rich in sugars, protein, and fat, because it's supposed to be kickstarting baby, right? So milk needs to be rich in these things for its purpose, right? You have something called essential fatty acids in you, right? Those are things like linoleic acid, found in most vegetable oils. When we're talking about an essential nutrient, we mean that our bodies need it to survive, but our body is not capable of making it on our own. That means we have to get it from the foods that we eat. It's essential, but we have to get it from somewhere else, right? It has to be ingested. You have your body uses lipids. Lipids help absorb fat-soluble vitamins. Estrogen, for example, is a vitamin that will absorb into fat. This is sort of important and needed for women. This is why women have more body fat than men typically, and why we grow more curves. Because estrogen is more of a fat-soluble hormone, and we need that excess fat in order to be a good reserve so we can carry a child through a harsh winter before refrigerators existed, right? Lipids are also the major fuel for your hepatocytes that we discussed in your digestive system, as well as skeletal muscles. So skeletal muscles can also burn on fatty acids, right? Phospholipids are essential to maintain your myelin sheaths and other cell membranes that are much needed throughout your body. You also have functions to adipose tissue, which is the fat that we store that most people complain about in our bodies, right? That adipose tissue acts as a protective cushion around your body organs. It's also an insulating layer underneath your skin, so it's going to keep you warm at night. And it's also going to be a good emergency source of energy in the event that your blood sugar drops down low, right? Fat also helps regulate prostaglandins in your body, right? If you don't remember what prostaglandins relate to, they relate to NSAID medication, like pain relief. So a lot of NSAID medications are fat soluble and are regulated to some degree by our fat content in our body, right? Fat is also helps regulate smooth muscle contraction, control of your blood pressure, and inflammation. So how much lipids you have in your body can affect all of those things, right? Cholesterol even has a function, all right? Cholesterol helps stabilize cell membranes and is a precursor to the bile salts we discussed in your digestive system videos, as well as steroid hormones like testosterone and whatnot, right? So cholesterol is also important. Your dietary requirements, suggested by the American Heart Association, because they are the ones that keep track of most of this, as they don't want your heart or your arteries to be clogged by excess cholesterol, right? Excuse me. The American Heart Association recommends that fats should represent 30% or less of your total calorie intake. Saturated fats should be limited to 10% or less. The less saturated fats, the better. And your daily cholesterol intake should be no more than 300 milligrams. Right? When we're talking about cholesterol, we have to keep in mind that there are low-density lipids and high-density lipids. High-density lipids are your good cholesterols, and the low-density lipids are your bad cholesterols. Good cholesterol versus bad cholesterol. Good cholesterol and good fats can absorb more fatty acid chains that your body makes. Saturated fats or your bad cholesterols cannot, and they're already full once you've ingested them, so they can't help your body anymore, and they're just being stored. Right? It's what lipids and fats do. Right? Right? This brings us to different forms of lipid breakdown and that kind of thing. And one of these words should be very familiar to you, which is ketogenesis. If you have too much acetyl-CoA in you and it's diverted away from the Krebs cycle, it will start creating ketone bodies inside you. Ketone bodies are like small energy little lipid fat groups or lipid groups in your body. And your body starts creating ketones when your body senses that glucose is low. So when your body thinks glucose levels are low, you will start to create ketones. Ketone bodies end up trying to be fuel during times of starvation, or if you have diabetes mellitus. Right? So if you have type 2 diabetes mellitus, that is type 2 diabetes, and your body is no longer capable of detecting your blood glucose levels well because insulin is out of whack, your body will start creating ketones as its fuel source so that it can keep going, which means you're going to end up with a high sugar content in your blood because your body doesn't think you have sugar because insulin's not working, but you do. And your body is going to make the ketone bodies for you to use as the energy source during times when it thinks you lack the glucose if you have diabetes. If you are starving to death, the ketones is your body's way of breaking down the cholesterols and the fats in order to do this. Right? So you can indeed get energy from these ketone bodies. Right? You guys know about this from the Keto Diet, because the entire purpose of the Keto Diet right now is to put your body into a stage of ketogenesis, right? Because you want to eat, like the purpose of the Keto Diet essentially is for you to eat so few carbs that your body thinks that you are going to starve, even though you're not starving because you're eating enough. You're eating like lipids, like heavier fats, because the Keto Diet allows you to eat lots of lipids. And it allows you to eat lots of proteins, so you're not going to, we'll talk about proteins in a minute and how it builds muscle, but you're not wanting for food on the keto diet because you are eating fats and proteins. But because your body uses glucose as its base unit of energy, if you deprive yourself of carbs to an extreme, your body will start creating these ketone. It will break down the fat that is inside you into ketone bodies that will be free floating through you as its energy source. That is the purpose of the keto diet. It is forcing your body to go into ketogenesis. Which is why if you are super duper into the keto diet long term, inevitably what happens is you, like, theoretically, if you follow keto through to the rest of your life, which it's not meant to be a lifelong diet, but people can wield it to be. If you wield it like that, theoretically, you are supposed to inevitably get to a point where you are your ideal body size, and body weight for what you want. And by that point in time, you stick to your never eating carbs diet, and you are supposed to increase your fat intake to level out with what you are developing in ketones. So that way you're eating the same amount of fat that your body is trying to break down a day, and you stop losing weight. That is the way that's the way the keto diet rationalizes end stage keto diet, right? When you've lost all the weight you want to, but you don't want to go back to eating carbs. That's what they tell you to do. The keto diet, because of this, because you are actively forcing your body to not have any carbs and to go into into ketogenesis, so you are breaking down your fat to make these ketones. If done safely, and if you are a healthy individual, it can be a decently quick way to lose a decent amount of weight, depending upon how well you stick to it and how long you do it for. However, I would advise talking to your doctor or someone else first. Double check your health and your health status first. I say this because I've known people who have lost a lot of weight on this, but I've also known people with diabetes who decided to try the keto diet so they could lose weight fast and be healthier with their diabetes. But they didn't take into account the fact that their bodies were already running off of ketones because of their diabetes, and they ended up putting themselves into a diabetic coma and going to the hospital because of this. Because things like diabetes will throw a monkey wrench into the works, and that also messes with your blood acidity, and a bunch of other problems. So if you do have any potential compounding issues like diabetes, before trying a super restrictive diet like keto, please go talk to your doctor or your endocrinologist, whoever it is that's prescribing you your insulin and that kind of thing. Talk to them first and make sure it's safe for you to do such a restrictive diet, because your intentions may be super good to lose the weight fast, but if you have that underlying issue, I don't want you to end up in the hospital. Right? So that's our little talk about the keto diet. Please be safe and responsible with that knowledge, my dears. Yeah, also, as you get older, because your digestive system slows down and fat is the thing that takes the longest and most energy to digest, the keto diet and other high-fat diets may not necessarily be the healthiest option for a middle-aged or elderly individual. You may need to switch to something that's more fiber-based and that kind of thing, right? Just so you have that idea of as time goes on and we age. On the flip side of things, and I feel like I should mention something positive about keto because I just kind of spent a few minutes warning you guys about a diet that can help you lose a lot of weight fast if you're healthy. The keto diet has, though, proven to be decently good for people that have imbalances with some of those fat-soluble hormones, like individuals that have polycystic ovarian, because estrogen and all of those hormones are fat-soluble. So the keto diet has proven to actually be helpful for women with PCOS. So a positive thing for you guys to mull over in your thoughts. Just please talk to your doctor if you have an underlying issue. I don't want you to get hurt. Right. And now we get to talk about proteins. Proteins do lots of stuff in your body. They are very useful. So we're going to talk about your dietary sources of protein first. So your dietary sources of proteins are things like eggs and milk, fish. Most, like meat, contains protein because it's muscle mass, right? Meat contains like complete proteins. Things like legumes, those are like fava beans, peanuts, that kind of thing. A bunch of nuts. And some cereals like oats also contain incomplete proteins. They may lack some like essential amino acids, so they're deemed incomplete, for humans at least. But if you create a meal with legumes and like cereals, you can like create a meal that does contain all essential amino acids, that doesn't use any animal products or meat. This is the goal of people who are vegetarian or vegan, because you don't have to have animal products to get the protein that you want in life. Like, all of us enjoy a really good steak, but if you choose to be a vegetarian or a vegan, you don't have to have an animal byproduct in there to get this. But if you are really wanting to try a vegetarian or a vegan lifestyle or diet, please double check what you're cooking for yourself. You have to make sure you get all of your essential nutrients and this kind of thing. So you're going to want a varied variety of like beans, chickpeas, lentils, legumes, all that kind of good stuff, because you're going to want to make sure that you have all of your bases as far as protein needs covered. Otherwise, you may end up making yourself very sick or feeling very weak. So just double check. If you want to try a vegetarian thing, double check your diet to make sure you're not just getting your protein from one source. Get it from a varied sources in life, right? Uses, because your body uses proteins in a bunch of different ways. So proteins are the structural materials, right, that build your muscles, as well as elastin, which is the stretchy part of your skins, collagen, and keratin. That's the hard, that's like the part of your fingernails that's hard, right? All of that is made out of protein, right? Additionally, like some of your hormones and all of the enzymes in your body are all proteins. Enzymes are a specialized form of proteins. And some of your hormones, like testosterone and that kind of thing, are also protein-based hormones. We talked about that one in your endocrine system. Your body kind of uses an all or none rule as far as amino acids go. Amino acids are needed, must be present for a protein to be made, because the amino acids are the building blocks of proteins, and if you are missing an amino acid, it's missing a piece like a puzzle and it can't be built. Right? So that means you have to have all of your amino acids available in order to make a protein. Right? You also have to have an adequate calorie intake, because protein is going to be used as a fuel. If you don't have enough fats or carbohydrates. This is why people in extreme situations who are starving to death start losing muscle mass, because protein is the last thing your body goes to break down in order to survive. So, like, it's going to go through the sugar and stuff to eat, and then it'll go through all of your excess fat, and then it starts going into your protein. Right? Proteins are also nitrogen-based, right? Or nitrogen-based. or they nitrogen based, they balance your nitrogen levels. So that states where, it's at that state where the rate of protein synthesis is going to equal the rate of breakdown and protein loss, because you have to have the amino acids and the nitrogen to break it down, right? So it's going to balance out your nitrogen in your body by breaking down and then rebuilding proteins. You're going to have a positive growth rate if your synthesis exceeds the breakdown, meaning you're growing, and that's normal in children, or if you are repairing tissue after an injury. It's going to be negative if the breakdown exceeds the synthesis or growth. You have negative breakdowns of nitrogen and this kind of thing when you're stressed, when you have an infection, during an injury, before you start repairing it, that kind of thing. Right? And proteins also provide hormone control. Like anabolic hormones, like your growth hormone and sex hormone, accelerate protein production or protein synthesis. The good rule of thumb for proteins is your dietary requirements are 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight for what they recommend you should be eating for proteins. So that means if you weigh 100 kilograms, you should be eating 80 grams of protein a day, right? You guys will have to play with these numbers with your own weight. No, you're not going to be tested on that. I'm just telling you for your own health, right? But that's what proteins do for you, right? And they are very important for this kind of thing. Nope. Right. So the reason why a lot of diets recommend you eat smaller meals throughout the day is so you can keep yourself in an absorption state instead of a storage state, if that makes sense, because you want this to always be anabolism exceeding catabolism, that kind of thing, right? Yeah. In your fasting state, that's more than 4 hours after a meal and when you are asleep. Right, that means your stomach and your intestines are empty. Your body is automatically going to start storing fuels that are used as energy. And it's going to try to maintain your blood glucose levels. So if you are going long periods of time between eating, your body is going to try to store more fats and energy during the time between foods. Whereas if you are constantly munching on healthy things throughout the day, the idea is that keeps your metabolism going and you never actually slip into this, oh, we need to store food phase. Right? That's how that thing kind of works. Right. So during starvation, so extreme times of problems, you are extremely depriving your body of nutrients for an extended period of time. That's what starvation is. So the first priority your body goes through is you need to get glucose to the brain, right? The second priority is to conserve amino acids for proteins. So your body is going to try to conserve all of your sugar inevitably for your brain, and it's going to break down your fat to use as ketones for energy, right? Muscles are going to switch to using fatty acids for their fuel source, but after several days, ketones are going to be the major source of energy, and once your fats are depleted, your muscles will be broken down as well. At that point, your ability to survive would depend upon your body's amount of fat and protein. Right? A couple of other things you guys should know about, right? Vitamins. right? Vitamins tend to be organic compounds that are crucial in helping your body use nutrients, but most of them help enzymes, so they are coenzymes. Vitamin D, B, and K are synthesized inside our body. Most of the other ones are not. So you have two types based on solubility. You have water-soluble vitamins and fat-soluble ones, right? Just like always, it's either water or fat that it's going to absorb in. B complex and C are absorbed in water. B12 requires intrinsic factor, and that one is water soluble. Water soluble vitamins, like vitamin C, are not stored in your body. They will pass through your body if you don't immediately need it. When it hits your body's filtration systems, like your kidneys, it's gonna go out with your urine, right? Fat-soluble vitamins, though, can be stored in the body because they will be stored in your adipose fat cells. This is like vitamins A, D, E, and K, right? Vitamins A, C, and E are also considered antioxidants, meaning they're very good for you, right? And minerals. Minerals are also very important. Minerals, there's about 7 of them that you need in your body. Minerals are things that your body needs, but they are actually types of rock or stone. So they never came from anything living, right? Calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, sodium, chloride, and magnesium are the 7 that you really need, right? Others may be required in trace amounts, but not much. Minerals are going to work with nutrients to ensure proper body functioning, right? Minerals are found on the periodic table. Nutrients are anything that we eat, but minerals were found on the periodic table. And in order to prevent a toxic overload, the uptake of them and your excretion of them has to balance out. So examples of this: calcium and phosphorus and magnesium salts harden bone. If you overdose on calcium, more things in your body are going to get harder than you want them to. Iron is essential for oxygen binding to hemoglobin, so you need to have some source of iron in you. This is why when we talked about blood, if your iron levels were low, I recommended cooking your food in a cast iron skillet to help increase your iron levels, right? Iodine is necessary for thyroid hormone synthesis. That's why we add iodine to salt. Sodium and chloride are major electrolytes in your blood. You guys know all the stuff that sodium and chloride can be used for because it's been mentioned everywhere in anatomy. And that's salt, right? Sodium chloride is salt. But that's the stuff you guys need to know about food. And everything y'all needed to know about that, right? So I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day. But that was it for the nutrients that you got to know about. Have a good night.